Judge calls homeless black man a waste of time, shocked when he reveals his identity. Before we begin, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wealth and Wounds, where we reveal the struggles, betrayals, and shocking victories of everyday people who refuse to stay down. He came into the courtroom in torn clothes, carrying nothing but a backpack. The judge rolled his eyes, muttering, "Another waste of time." But what no one knew was that the man the court thought was worthless was hiding an identity that would change everything. And when he revealed the truth, the same people who mocked him were forced to stand in silence. The courtroom was buzzing with impatience. Lawyers shuffled their papers, clerks whispered to each other, and the judge leaned back in his chair, already annoyed. Then the bailiff's voice rang out. Case number 547, State versus Marcus Brown. A man shuffled in. He was tall, but his posture was bent. His clothes were old, ragged, and stained. His shoes barely had soles, and his hands were calloused and dirty. His backpack, torn at the seams, looked like it had been dragged through the streets. The jurors exchanged glances. Some smirked, others frowned with pity. The judge, an older white man with a permanent scowl, sighed loudly. "Oh great, another homeless trespasser. This should be quick." He leaned into his microphone, his voice dripping with disdain. "Mr. Brown, do you even understand why you're here today? Or are we wasting the court's time?" Marcus didn't flinch. He looked straight at the judge, his deep voice calm. "I understand perfectly, Your Honor." But his tone steady, dignified, unshaken, unsettled the room. The prosecutor stepped forward, smug. "Your Honor, this man was found sleeping on private property, the lobby of a financial firm downtown. He refused to leave when asked, claiming he had the right to be there. Security called the police. Clearly, this is just another vagrant disturbing the peace." The judge rolled his eyes. "Mr. Brown, you look like you haven't worked a day in your life. Why should we take your word over theirs?" Laughter echoed from the back rows of the courtroom. Even some jurors chuckled. Marcus stood still, his hands resting on his backpack straps. "I will explain, Your Honor, but I need to present something first." The prosecutor smirked. "What could you possibly present?" "A food stamp card." Marcus calmly reached into his backpack. The room grew tense. The bailiff's hand hovered near his holster, but Marcus only pulled out a thick, leather-bound folder. He walked to the bench, his steps deliberate, and placed it before the judge. The judge flipped it open impatiently. Then he froze. Inside were ownership papers, bank statements, legal documents, and, at the very top, a deed signed in Marcus's name. The deed to the very building he was accused of trespassing in. The courtroom went silent. Marcus's voice carried through the silence. "That building they accused me of trespassing? I own it. Every floor, every brick. I bought it years ago through a holding company. They didn't recognize me because they never imagined someone who looked like me could own something they only dream of." The judge's jaw dropped. The prosecutor's face turned red. Marcus turned to the jury. "For years, I kept my wealth quiet. I lived simply. I gave back to the community. I stayed low so people wouldn't treat me differently. But when I decided to spend one night in the lobby, my own lobby, they called me a vagrant, a criminal, a waste of time." Gasps filled the room. The judge stammered. This can't be. Is this authentic?" Marcus looked him in the eye. "Call the bank. Call the county clerk's office. Every stamp, every signature, every transfer is real. Because the man you thought was worthless is the rightful owner of what you thought was yours to mock." The prosecutor stumbled, papers falling from his hands. "Your Honor, this doesn't change the fact that he looks suspicious." Marcus cut him off. "No, what it changes is everything. Because what you see as suspicious was simply me, without the mask of wealth, without the suit, without the title, just me. And the way you treated me proves how quickly people decide someone's worth by the clothes on their back." The jury looked guilty. Some of the jurors who had laughed now sat red-faced, avoiding his gaze. The judge leaned back, shaken. He had mocked Marcus, called him a waste of time, but the truth had humiliated him in front of everyone. Marcus took a deep breath. "And there's one more thing." He unzipped a hidden pocket in his backpack and pulled out another envelope. He held it up for the court to see. In here are documents proving that not only do I own the building, but I also hold shares in the very law firm prosecuting me. Meaning, he paused, his words cutting through the silence like a blade. I partly own the salary of the man trying to put me away. The prosecutor's knees buckled. Reporters jumped to their feet, cameras flashing. The judge banged his gavel desperately. Order! Order in the court. But it was too late. The power had shifted. The man who walked in looking like nothing now stood taller than everyone in the room. Marcus turned toward the gallery, his voice low but commanding. Never judge a man by the dirt on his shoes, because sometimes the man with nothing in his pockets has more power than you could ever imagine. The courtroom buzzed like a hive. The judge looked defeated. The prosecutor looked destroyed. But Marcus wasn't finished. As he prepared to leave, he looked back at the judge and said quietly, "Your Honor, you still don't know who I really am. The papers tell part of the story, but my true identity, that's something I'll reveal tomorrow." The courtroom erupted in questions. Who was this man really? What was he hiding? The judge banged his gavel, shouting for silence. But it was too late. The world was already waiting for the reveal. Never underestimate someone because of how they look. Power and dignity aren't always dressed in fine suits. True worth can't be seen by the eyes of arrogance, only by the eyes of respect. The gavel slammed against the bench. Order! The judge barked, though his voice shook. Reporters filled the room. Jurors whispered nervously, and the prosecutor looked like he might faint. Everyone stared at Marcus. Who was this man? Marcus stood tall, the glow of his documents still burning in the minds of everyone present. But his eyes were heavy, burdened with years of pain. He spoke slowly. "You all want to know who I really am? Fine, but understand this. The truth won't just change this courtroom. It'll change how you see justice itself." The room leaned in. He pulled another folder from his backpack, older, worn, its edges yellowed with time. Inside were photographs. Marcus lifted one. It showed a much younger version of himself, clean-shaven, sharp suit, standing in front of a prestigious law school's banner. Gasps filled the courtroom. "Yes," Marcus said. "Years ago, I wasn't homeless. I was one of the top law students in this country. I graduated at the top of my class. Firms begged me to join them. Judges praised my brilliance. I was supposed to be the next great legal mind." The judge stiffened. His hand tightened around the gavel. "But what happened?" A juror whispered. Marcus's voice cracked for the first time. What happened was corruption. The same corruption that sits in these very seats today. He flipped to another photo, him in a courtroom years ago, standing beside his mother. She looked frail, sickly. Across the aisle, a wealthy businessman smiled smugly. Marcus's tone hardened. "My mother was cheated out of her home by a powerful developer. I fought for her in court, but every time I presented evidence, it was lost. Every time I filed a motion, it was delayed. And the judge back then, he laughed at me, just like you did today, Your Honor." He glared directly at the judge. The judge's face went pale. Marcus continued, voice low and sharp. "I proved fraud. I proved forgery. But the system protected the powerful. My mother lost everything. She died shortly after. And I walked away from the law. I walked away from everything. Because what good was brilliance in a system rigged against the poor?" Silence hung heavy in the air. Even the prosecutor couldn't find words. "But I didn't disappear," Marcus said, straightening. "I built wealth in silence. I bought property. I invested in businesses that others ignored. I live humbly, and while the system thought it had broken me, I was building the kind of power money can't erase." He looked around the courtroom, his voice rising. "Because one day, I swore I'd come back. Not as a lawyer begging for fairness, but as a man they couldn't silence." The judge's gavel slammed again. "This is irrelevant. You're grandstanding." But Marcus only smirked. "Is it irrelevant, Your Honor, or are you afraid?" The gallery erupted with murmurs. Marcus pulled out one final envelope, thicker, heavier. He handed it to the bailiff, who reluctantly delivered it to the judge. The judge opened it. His hands trembled, his face drained of color. Inside were sealed indictments. Documents prepared by federal investigators, detailing bribes, fraud, and corruption, with the judge's own name listed. The room exploded. Reporters shouted, cameras flashed, jurors gasped in disbelief. The judge's gavel slammed desperately. This is inadmissible. This is outrageous. Marcus stepped forward, his voice calm but deadly. Outrageous? What's outrageous is a judge calling me a waste of time, when the real waste is the justice you've stolen from countless people. The system protects you, but I promise you, the truth won't. The judge's lips trembled. For the first time, the man who held the power looked powerless. Marcus turned to the gallery. You all wanted to know who I really am. I'm Marcus Brown, once a law student they tried to silence. Now, the man bringing down the very corruption that buried my mother. He paused. His voice dropped to a whisper. And today, Your Honor, I'm not just here as a defendant. I'm here as your reckoning. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Just as the tension reached its peak, a new voice rang out from the back of the courtroom. Marcus Brown. Everyone turned. A woman in a sharp black suit stepped forward, flashing a federal badge. I'm Agent Carter, Department of Justice. We've been waiting for this moment. Marcus, it's time. Marcus nodded solemnly, as though he had expected this. The judge stammered. What is this? Agent Carter's eyes locked on him. This is bigger than your courtroom, Your Honor. And trust me, this is only the beginning. The gavel fell from the judge's hand. The sound echoed like a death knell. True power isn't found in titles or robes. It isn't found in wealth alone. It's found in resilience, in refusing to be silenced by corruption. The man they called a waste of time became the very force that exposed their wasted justice. If Marcus's revelation left you speechless, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wealth and Wounds. Because in part 2, the truth about Marcus's alliance with federal agents will shake the nation.